This morning, I'm just going to talk a little bit about why. Why do we have a Modern Widows Club and a Widow Empowerment Weekend? But before I do that, I want to show you these slides because last night we were sitting in the bar, and I was talking with the Dallas chapter, and Robin was talking about, I would really like to have. I'd like to start a chapter. And I was like, oh, I knew that. I saw that in your eyes when I met you in Dallas at Jerry's house. And she goes like, really? And I go, I'm telling you, I have a gift for that. I don't know what it is, but it's like I have a sense. I see that light and that rising empowerment in someone, and it's such a cool thing. So anyway, we were sitting there, and all of a sudden, they were talking about the chapter of the year, and a baby dragonfly came and landed on their award. You see the picture? So, can you see it? Here's a close-up. So I'm not sure what's happening here, but we had these dragonflies in here yesterday, which of course is a symbol of rebirth. And the word Renaissance, the hotel you're at is Renaissance, is about rebirth. And I've often through my widowhood journey thought, when I finally sort of identified that life with Chad died along with him, and that part of my grieving was the fact that I was a baby again. Like I was an adult, and I was cognitive, and I had skills, and I could do things, but sort of spiritually, I was an infant. And so, 18 years old, and I'm a rebel. So watch out, world. But I wanted to share that with you guys before we got to the why, because I just thought, I don't know. These are little signs that, tell you along the way that, something much bigger, something more powerful is happening when we come together. So the why of MWC and the Widow Empowerment Weekend. So just so you know, this is actually one of the educational pieces that I do, partly educating widows, because I knew none of this when I became widowed. This has been a kind of a transition over 17 years, and then 2 years ago, I was honored to actually speak at the United Nations when the Loomba Foundation, or Loomba, who really is like the premier research organization. And they are actually in London, and Lord Loomba invited me. He contacted me and said, you're the biggest widow advocate in the US. And I said, what? I'm just like a little texter, Twitter and Instagram. And he goes, you promote International Widows Day on June 23rd more than anyone in the United States. And I was shocked. I mean, I'm just like at stoplights going, at the grocery store. I mean, literally, no joke. And that kind of surprised me, because I thought, if I'm the biggest widow advocate, then what does that say about widows being represented around the world? Because there's this thing called the Sustainable Development Goals with the United Nations, and number 5 is about women and girls, specifically about poverty and making sure that they have education. Well, his whole goal is actually to make sure that widows are represented, because the reality is there's 258 million widows in the world that are caring for 585 million fatherless kids around the world. So I envision a world where we create widow leaders and mentors and advocates in the Western world to start changing that. The fact that widows are not really represented in policy, in economic and social situations. I really feel like we are that group of women that are starting the movement of raising awareness. So I do a lot of listening to widows. You know, if you sit, and this is what I tell pastors all the time, and rabbis, just sit down and talk to a widow. She will tell you what you'd like to, she may not tell you what you want to hear, but she'll tell you the truth. And if you will listen to her, it would be a game changer for you. And so we listened to our community and we came up with this graphic. So I think the grief organization is well represented. Hospice, Vitus, lots of grief centers. I was able to go to one, grief counselors, and that is kind of focused on the first couple of years, right? So that's about, you know, it's who she was. So on the left, it's who she was, and where we're trying to get to is who she's becoming. Like to recognize that it's a transformative experience. Widowhood is, who am I? What's next? How do I do this, right? So grief is focused on surviving. This is the reality. How do I do this on my own? This isn't what I signed up for. It's about surviving and about your mental health and grief recovery. And what I found is that when I left New Hope for Kids and sort of was ushered back into society, that there was private counseling, and there weren't any widows organizations that I could connect with. This was in 2000, 2001. September 11th happened, and I was on chat rooms, and these women from September 11th were coming to me for advice at a year and a half. And I don't know if about you guys, but a year and a half, I was still fragile. But I had this giving heart, and I would comfort these ladies, and I had a breakdown. And what I learned from that is I needed someone to protect me, someone to nurture me. And that's why we make the rule 2 years before you become a leader. We really do want to respect that process. But as I started really analyzing everything, I went, where do I go to be inspired? Where do I go to be empowered? Where do I go to learn from someone who's a little bit further along than me? And it just didn't exist. And so, of course, in 2011, I went, I'll be the change. I'll step up. I didn't have what I needed, but I will create what I needed. And so MWC comes in sort of at the apex of the bridge, right? A lot of times what I see with widows is, I imagine this vision of someone drowning, and they're trying to reach up out of the water, and they come up for a breath, and then something happens, and then they go back under the water. And that panic situation of, am I gonna make it? So, Modern Widows Club is very much focused on the power of community. And we don't want our ladies to fall into the water. We don't want them to fall in the water and have to actually swim to the edge, which is who knows where. That's what I kind of felt like my experience was like. I was drowning for many years. No one knew it. You know, it was just me in my mind. I actually lost a lot of weight. I looked fabulous. But I was a hot mess inside. I was dating and like being a man-hater, and I mean, it was a bad scene. And, but you know, if I hear all of you guys talking, and I think, man, wish I had that kind of like conversation. Like, I probably, who knows, would have probably like married the first dream guy that I dated seriously. Like, who knows, we might start dating after his divorce. But, but it's like, you know, I look back and I was like, somebody would have helped walk me through that and said, let love in. Like someone would have probably said that to me. And I would have seen it from a different perspective, but I wasn't. It was just like this old record like playing in my head, and it was like, oh, it's not gonna work. He's younger than me, he doesn't have kids, you know, and I was like, I wasn't seeing the good qualities, but that's just one example. So the social support is so powerful because what we have as widows is so much wisdom. We're role models. We're champions for each other. And we start moving into what I call, and what the psychological industry calls reconciliation, right? There, in that space, which is where we are here, is all about thriving. It's all about finding ways to be empowered and finding that inspiration. And then getting safely to the shore of who you're becoming. That's what we want. So the next thing is we discovered these thing called secondary losses. But I couldn't find anywhere in the research, and believe me, I've looked, where something like this exists. And so I thought, well, let's create it. Let's ask our ladies, like, what are the secondary losses? And this is what all of you and our community, we probably had, 500 responses on Facebook when we asked this question, because loss of a spouse is the #1 most stressful life event. It has, just that one event in our life has 100 stress units. The closest thing, just to give you a perspective, the closest thing to 73 points is divorce. I also think losing a child is actually at 100. It's not listed on that, but I believe that that's true. So let's say you change residence. That's another 40 points. Let's see, hey, did anybody's intimacy life change? That's another 30 points. Did they move? That's another 50 points. The point I'm making is that it's really fast. It gets you up to 300 points pretty quickly, okay? And when you get to 300 points, you have an 80% chance of becoming critically ill. Now, what does that mean? I don't know. Maybe you trip. Maybe your equilibrium's off. Maybe your nutrition is off. Something, this physical body that's connected to a heart and a mind, is having an all-front attack. So when we talk about well-being, we're very serious about it here at Modern Widows Club, because we want you taking care of you. First and foremost, because you have great things to do in this world. And we want to make sure your body and your mind and your heart are ready for that. So the secondary losses, some of you guys can maybe see it. Loss of a parenting partner, loss of general sense of security, loss of income, loss of identity, loss of health, loss of dreams for a future, loss of your best friend. Gosh, you guys, I tell people all the time, what's it like being a widow? I don't know. What's it like losing your favorite person in the world? How would you feel? Loss of faith. I went through a long journey with this. Long journey. Was not sure. Was very mad at God for a long time. Loss of social status. Anybody feel that? Mm-hmm. Loss of confidence. Even Sheryl Sandberg talked about that. Think about it. A woman with that much power, lean into life, that much power, that much prestige. She talks about losing her confidence. She had no idea that that would happen to her. Loss of home. A lot of women cannot sustain what it costs to keep that. Loss of intimacy. Loss of your job. Really hard to take care of your kids when you're sick, when you can't keep your job. And let's just face it, corporate America is not very understanding. You get 3 days of bereavement leave. 3 days, people. You know how many women I have talked to who have to take a vacation day just to bury their partner? It's just, oh, my activist part of me just gets so upset when I think of that. Loss of financial security, loss of support system. Oh, widow brain. Loss of working memory. who's experienced widow brain? Me too. And you know what? We're going to meet people at this conference like Tara Collingwood, who taught me about what to eat to be able to improve that. We're going to talk to Dr. Maxino, and we're going to talk about adrenal fatigue and what grief does to your body and what you can do, because hormones are a really important part of getting balanced. But that's just a few. So, in 2015, I was invited to come to the UN, and for that was the launch of the 2015 World Widows Report, which is a book about this thick. And you guys, it changed me being there. I was standing in a room full of widow advocates from all over the world, Philippines, England, Australia, Africa, Cameroon, and I was blown away by these women. One woman had came from Cameroon and had only enough money to fly there. She had been living on the streets in New York City. She had not had a meal, and she came just to be heard because there are widows in Cameroon that are starving and no one is helping. And I was the last person to speak, and I was from this wealthy country that has so many resources, and I went, what do I have to offer? And I said, basically, exactly what I said earlier. Western world widows are going to help change this. We do have the resources, and we can do this. There are actually 39 countries in the world that have more than 1 million widows. China is the top one, 43 million. India, 42 million. The US is number 3, almost 13.6 widows. And then you can see these other numbers: Indonesia 9, Japan 7, Russia 7, and it just goes on and on and on. They have it broken down by every country. I get a lot of emails from women from lots of countries. You know, can I start a Modern Widows Club? I don't know if we have any widows in my country. And I'm like, let me send you a screenshot. So, you know, it's interesting when I started Modern Widows Club, I had no idea really what was happening. But I took this screenshot last night, you guys. So I just went back to, this is our Facebook likes, just to give you an idea of how much women want this. This is why when someone in your community comes to you and says, I have a widow that I want you to meet, it's a phenomenon, okay? Because we do no advertising on Facebook. Our marketing department is right here, like in this room and out online. In August 8th, 2015, we had 11,900 followers. Today, we have 24,087. That increases all, and I have no idea how women are finding out about Modern Widows Club, but it's wonderful. But who are we, right? So 91% of the people on our Facebook page are engaged, okay? So here's these graph bars. The highest age group is 55 to 64. And then the next group is, how many people we have in here in that age group? It's okay. Yeah. Okay.
Proudly.
Yeah, proudly. And then next one down is 45 to 54. I fall into that group. How many people we have in that group? Where's the kind of even? And then the next one is 65 plus, 20%. Okay. Okay. Did you forget for a minute, Debbie? Yeah, you're so funny. And then 15% is age 35 to 44. Okay. Okay. And then 6%, 25 through 34. 25. And then 18 to 24 is 1%. We have anyone in here from 18 to 24? Okay. So what's interesting about this is the gray part is how many women we have actually that age. The blue part is how many are engaging, looking at posts, liking posts, sharing posts, whatever. Look how high that is. Most people don't have Modern Widows Club chapters, but the women that are online, they're involved. So where are our ladies coming from? Oh, this was so fascinating to me. Obviously, the United States. South Africa is the next one down. Nigeria. Canada, United Kingdom, India, Australia, Ghana, Philippines, and Kenya. And then cities, which I didn't do the whole list, but most of our chapters actually are on there. Someplace in Nigeria. Like we have this whole group of widows in Africa that follow everything that we do because they're learning from us. Houston! Sorry, Dallas. Sorry, Seattle. They got a little competition going. New York City. We don't even have a chapter there. Orlando, right? Chicago. Dallas. Okay, there you guys. San Antonio. We don't have a chapter there. Johannesburg, South Africa. Cassie. Remember? Cassie met a whole group of widows when she was in South Africa a few weeks ago. And I was like, they want a chapter. LA, Jen! And Jacksonville, Florida. I was just talking to someone who wanted a chapter in Jacksonville. Yeah? Well, look, we actually have a lot of ladies in Jacksonville. So we study these things because there's actually, you know, we do know, kind of know, we're a community. So we created this graphic, and we kind of throw this out here when I'm traveling and I'm speaking. So the U.S. has the third largest population of widows at 13.6, behind China, 43, and India, 42 million. The one statistic is the one that's most alarming to me. This has risen by 32% since 2011. 49% earn less than $25,000 a year. That's from the 2011 U.S. Census Bureau. Real statistics. The average age for a widow in this country is 59 years old. And widows receive very little outreach in society. Would you guys agree? Yeah. Yeah. So this is the why, right? So on average, 75% of survivor support base is lost following the loss of a spouse or a significant other. This includes loss of support from family and friends. Has anyone here lost support from family and friends? And that's not always the case. But we find that this is more the norm than not. And it surprised me, you know. I mean, I experienced it. It was my experience. But I just thought, oh, my family sucks. You know, really? I'm just like, oh, they don't get it. But that wasn't really true. I actually realized that. My grandfather had committed suicide actually 4 months before my husband died. So my dad had found him, and he wasn't available because he was grieving. And then my mom had become widowed 2 years before that. So she was in her second year of widowhood, and she was grieving. And so my in-laws were grieving their only son. So it wasn't that they didn't love me and they didn't want to be there for support. I know that now. But then, right back then, I wanted everybody to drop everything and come help me because I needed it. But now I know better. Now I know that grieving affects people in different ways. And look, I'm grateful that I was actually still able to be very respectful and honoring of both of them, despite me not getting what I needed. So, but this is what I believe. Like, we can look at these statistics and we can, you know, kind of be down about them, but it doesn't do that to me. To me, it's like, well, let's change that. And how are we going to do that? I don't know. I'm going to go talk to some other widows because they're the most resourceful women on earth. This event is a perfect example. Being in Modern Widows Club is like having a secret weapon within widowhood. It binds strong social ties that fortify the journey. This is what I have found to be true. There is something so powerful when widows mentor, connect, nurture, strengthen, empower each other. And it's for life. You get to take it with you. So that is the why of MWC and Widow Empowerment Weekend. And we hope this is not going to be our first time, that we get to continue doing this and empowering more widows around the world. So thank you, guys. So I'm going to have Jodie Rodenbaugh come up here for the next part of the conference. And I asked Jodie to come and just speak on turning life on and letting life in. Because what I really realized being a widow is that I kind of shut down. And no one really told me I was doing it, and I kind of knew I was doing it, but I really wasn't open. And I want to really start the conference with, let's let love in. Let's open our hearts. Let's be prepared for this amazing gift that we're about to receive this weekend. Not just with the people, but the speakers and the whole experience. So, hey. So here she is.
Here we are. I speak with my hands, and I have a microphone in one and a clicker in the other, and I don't typically use a PowerPoint, so we'll see how this goes. I'm going to share with you a little bit of my story and my experience, because my experience wasn't an experience of leaning into life.
Oh, hi, Robert. Oh, how are you? You're gonna do good. How are you? I just walked off the stage.
Oh, that's great. God love Carolyn. We got it? She good? All right. So my experience was one of not leaning into life. I actually jumped head on into life. Today we're going to talk about letting life in. We're going to let our arms open and let life in. Letting life in is an art and a science. The art part is you. The gifts that you bring, the talents that you bring, the breath that you bring. Just recognizing that your breath holds value in this one room, at this one table, is highly important. The art is you, but the science is all the same. The science is the law. The science is the universal law of life. It's how you do life. And dare I say that we can actually choose a life that was better than what we had. Stretch into that for a moment. 4 years ago, I found myself on a stage, kind of like Carolyn, only it wasn't Oprah. It was Ricky Lake. And Ricky Lake, who knows Ricky Lake still? Okay, all right, we're good. So it's 2013, and I'm on the stage as a guest expert. The topic, suddenly single and pregnant. Four years prior to that, I found myself in a small room at the hospital with all the people that I love, standing in front of a doctor that I'd never met before, who told me he just pronounced my husband dead. And in that moment, I had an out-of-body experience. I was at the top of my game. I was 36, I had a 5-year-old, a 2-year-old, and I was 15 weeks pregnant with our third. I had this out-of-body experience where, like you see in the movies, I was looking down at myself, holding my pregnant belly, and I saw myself for the first time ever, and I fell in love with that woman. In that very moment, I learned what unconditional love was. I learned that my breath held value. I learned that I had life still inside of me. And I made a very conscious decision. Some psychologists would call that a dissociation. It wasn't. I was very aware. That is the observer. I call that observer the love genius. Later on today, Robert is going to speak to that particular observer. He doesn't call it the love genius, but that's what I call it. The love genius is the observer of yourself. You all have a love genius inside of you. It's your intuition. It's your knowing. It's why you're here. All right, Cheryl. There we go. So back at Ricky Lake. Oh, Cheryl, that's why I can't see the advancement. I can't see the next slide. I don't typically work with slides, right? So I got to see my next slide, or I usually channel. Those of you who hear me, I channel. So it's really hard to stay to the point in 20 minutes, you guys. So back at Ricky Lake, Ricky asked me, what was the most difficult thing about that whole situation? And my reply, all the damn decisions, right? Decision after decision after decision after decision after decision. All the damn decisions. Life is a decision. It's a decision. You can literally draw a line in the sand and walk across and make that decision. It's a commitment. And decision is created by thought. And thought is simply energy. And that energy comes from who you believe you are. The problem is that energy is coming from one of three places. Actually, it's coming from one of four places, but we're going to stick to these three today. It's coming from a place of consciousness, which is only for most people 10% of their decisions. Now for widows, because we've just experienced trauma, that 10%, I don't know the percentage on it, but I bet you it's less than half of that, where our decisions are awake, they're conscious, and they're alive. The rest of our decisions are coming from a place of subconscious and unconsciousness. And these decisions on the subconscious level are you reacting to things based on situations and experiences that you had prior to the age of 7 years old. They come from core wounds that you experienced. Typically, those core wounds are, I'm unworthy or I'm unlovable. And so when trauma hits, that sudden emotional impact, we start operating from the subconscious level, which is typically where we see the amygdala leading, fight, flight, or freeze. The unconscious level is what we call this big fancy word in science called epigenetics. Anybody know epigenetics? So epigenetics is the study of how we are bringing with us our ancestral lineage, so we get passed down their trauma, their environment. So my grandfather grew up, he was orphaned in Croatia when he was 10 years old. And he was sent to the United States by himself at 10 years old. Talk about trauma. That trauma resonates in his DNA. That DNA gets passed down to you. And that's resonating within your body. So if you have trauma in this lifetime, not only do you have their trauma, but you also have your own. And it's resonating in your cellular DNA. We're talking big stuff here. But life is big stuff. You're getting results that you're getting based on the cycle of results. When you were a baby, babies only feel. They do not comprehend, they do not rationalize, they do not justify, they do not have specific thoughts, they only feel. So what they're feeling is feelings from their mother. I was pregnant. I had a 2-year-old and a 5-year-old. I knew this. Intuitively, I was also a teacher for 16 years and I studied emotional intelligence, so I knew this on a deep cellular level. Children do not hear you, they feel you. They resonate with your feelings and then they act as you do. And those feelings, as you grow and you start to gain that conscious mind at 7 years old, you begin to form thoughts, and thoughts become things. Thoughts are the energy. And from those thoughts, you create a belief system. And from that belief system comes emotions. And then you act in certain ways and get certain results. That's how it's done. Growth and trauma feel the same to your body. When you made a commitment to come here, your body felt nervous. Your body, when you came into the room last night, it was as if a saber-toothed tiger was chasing you. These widows are all dangerous. Right? Tammy stood up here on the stage last night. Oh my gosh, I'm so nervous. It's just a room of widows. We're not in danger. But growth and trauma feel the same in the body, and you have to claim it. You have to tell it what is. That wasn't fear. That wasn't nerves. That was your power. And there is a lot of power in this room. That was your power. When my kids get nervous, I say, no, baby. No. That is your power. Let that girl out. Growth and trauma occur in two ways: sudden emotional impact or repetition over a period of time. We've all experienced sudden emotional impact. What I like to do is create sudden emotional impact of a positive nature, because we've all experienced sudden emotional impact of a negative nature. And then we follow with the results cycle, repetition over a period of time. We all have 3 basic needs as babies. This was my baby when she was 3 months old. Aww. We all have 3 basic needs: love, security, and self-esteem. When that trauma hits, that sudden emotional impact, these 3 things are compromised. And we accidentally think that we need these 3 things from something outside of ourselves. We did as a baby. We did as a child. And if we did not receive the love, security, and self-esteem that we needed as little children, we grow up and we get codependent relationships. We depend on everybody else to fulfill our emotions and fill our needs. And we create this dependency upon other people to fulfill us, other people to provide love, security, and self-esteem. But as adults, it's our personal responsibility to provide those for ourselves. But when trauma hits, these 3 things are the first 3 things to be compromised. And there's a secret to letting life in. You want to know the secret? Yep. Desire. The word desire means of the Father. You can't accomplish anything in life if you don't want it bad enough. That's the seed. The seed is desire. You have to want it. And so when I had that out-of-body experience, I wanted it. I wanted life. I made a commitment. I saw this definition. I was a teacher for 16 years, and I decided after 2.5 years, I had grown out of the brick box, and I decided to leave and become a life coach. And when I was in coaching school and researching, I didn't know who actually I wanted to speak to. Who do I want to talk to? Who do I give this to? And I saw this verb definition of a widow: to deprive of something valued or desirable. And I remember in researcher mode, and I actually pushed back from my desk, and I was like, oh, hell no. Not on my watch. My mom was not a widow, but she acted like a widow, according to this verb definition. She deprived herself over and over again of life, and I couldn't understand, I couldn't comprehend as a little girl why she was depriving herself of this life, why she was making excuses not to live. So I said, not on my watch. I absolutely refused to let my kids become a sad statistic based on my own emotional ignorance. That's desire. Like, it's a line in the sand kind of a thing. So I made 3 promises: that I was going to live, I was going to love, I was going to lead. And whatever came out of that would be the inspiration. So these were the 4 questions that I asked myself. And those of you long line fact finders who are like stressed out because you don't have the tangible thing in your hand and you're trying to take notes, I will give you these PowerPoints, so no worries. You're gonna get everything you need in perfect time, okay? Start asking yourself these questions. Am I loving and being loved like I truly desire? Now, I'm not talking about the kind of love that lives outside of yourself. It has to start here. This is Love Genius. Love Genius begins here. Am I truly loving myself and being loved by myself like I truly desire? You know, self-esteem, I call self-esteem, is just simply, am I proud of who I'm being in this moment? Am I living the life that I want to live? Am I living the life that I want to live? These are big idea questions. These are not questions that you're going to be able to answer. It's not a one and done. These are ongoing. I'm constantly asking myself these questions. Now, what this means is you have to let go. You have to be willing to let go of anything that's keeping you from growing. And that's a little easier said than done. And am I leading by the ultimate abundant example? Am I coming from a place of abundance? And the final question that I ask myself is, how shall I choose to inspire with the rest of my time here? We get this one life in this one this is our life partner, right here. She doesn't go anywhere that I don't go for the rest of my time here. This is the constant. And we all have a choice. When it comes to decisions, which can be overwhelming, know this, you have one of two choices. You can choose a poverty mind or an abundant mind. The poverty mind works from a pain brain. The abundant mind works from a miracle brain. That's where Love Genius resides. The pain brain focuses on fear, worry, doubt, death, lack, loss, all the things that were. The miracle brain focuses on love, focuses on life and trust and abundance. It believes that loss is an illusion, because it is. I still have an amazing relationship with my husband. It's just not the one that I signed up for. It comes from a space of faith and belief. And so poverty mind, when we're in poverty mind, what we're really in is prison. And the first awareness that has to be done is that you have to recognize you're in a prison. And that prison is in your mind. It thinks with the head. This is what I call the love ignorant. It's the critical self. It's the shaming self, the doubting self, the guilty self. It focuses on lack, doubt, fear, worry, shame, guilt. It's codependent or independent. You got your codependence. I can't do it without. You got your independence. I don't need no stinking man anyway. The abundant mind, however, is freedom. It thinks with the whole heart. The whole heart is your intuition. It is this entire being. Your intuition comes from your feelings inside. It comes from your emotions. It comes from your desires. This is the love genius. And it's the enlightened self. It focuses on abundance and confidence, conviction. I get to be here. My mantra after my husband died, I get to be here. 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 Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. That was my prayer. Choosing life takes blisscipline. It's blisscipline. It's a commitment to bliss. It doesn't mean that I don't feel sad. It doesn't mean that I don't feel guilt sometimes. It doesn't mean that I don't feel shame sometimes. It means I'm more committed to abundant mindset than I am to poverty mindset. This is my secret weapon tool. And like I said, don't panic. There's a lot of content, a lot of information on one page for you. All of our emotions have actually been measured by scientists. Do you know that you all are a human vibrator? You are. We all vibrate it at a certain frequency, and it all depends on what we're feeling inside. Well, that's just one aspect. But for today's sake, the emotion that you're feeling. So when we look down here at the bottom row, which is shame, shame is measured at a frequency of 20 hertz. Now let's compare that to love, which is measured at 500 hertz. And so when I had that out-of-body experience and I was looking down at myself and I fell in love with her, I saw her for the first time. I didn't know what unconditional love was. I really didn't. I had 2 children and a husband who loved me and I adored, but I really, truly did not know what unconditional love was. And that's what I felt. And right after that, here's the thing. When 4 hands are always better than 2, because I couldn't tie my bow here. I needed some help. So when I had that out-of-body experience and I'm standing in that room, the first thing that I thought was, there are other women like me. I thought of 9/11, and there were pregnant women. There were many women who are not only dealing with the death of their husband, but they're dealing with trauma, like trauma. And some of you are sitting in here who have dealt with trauma. Now, trauma is not a Richter scale. I like to say this. Trauma is not on a Richter scale. It's all relative to how you feel about it. But I was just focused on those women who had done it before me, and I knew that I could do it. And I focused on gratitude. My husband was accidentally killed during a routine rotator cuff surgery. He hadn't actually gone into surgery. He was killed with a local block of anesthesia that accidentally went into his main artery. And they worked on him for 6 hours because he was 37. They screwed up. And so for 6 hours, my family and friends and everyone were able to gather at the hospital. And there were so many people. And all I could focus on was, wow, another good prayer. Wow. Wow. So many people love us. Wow. I'm not the only one grieving here. Wow. They're grieving too. And I walked out of that room and I was like, thank you. Thank you. Again, look at the vibration of that. So, over a period of time, of course, I couldn't make toast on my own for a while. That's not what I'm saying. I went through all the emotions. Let's back up here. I felt guilt. I was resentful on a lot of levels to my husband. I felt guilt. But it wasn't my commitment. I didn't stay there. I was only visiting as the observer, as the love genius. I'm feeling guilty. Why am I feeling guilty? What are you going to do instead? Big level questions. So these are the big level questions that I want you to start asking yourself over the weekend. And I'm going to come back around, let's see, around 10 o'clock-ish or so. And we're going to go through an exercise to help solidify these things. But I want you to start thinking, who am I really? What do I want? You can even say, what do I want now? Meaning, that's what, because typically what we do is our brain will say, but I wanted this, but this is where I was. Okay, what do you want now? What can you control? Why am I here? Not just why am I here at Empowerment Weekend, but that too. And if that's where you want to start there. And what would you really love to create as your new normal? These are the big ideas. And I'll be back. Before my husband died, my husband's name was Thor, by the way, Thor. And before he died, I was a mess. I lived in pain brain. I was really on some level committed to pain. And I never slept. And he would always tell me, well, babe, you just aren't tired. Because he could sleep at the drop of a pin, right? And I'm like, no, I'm exhausted. But I kid you not, that night, I slept for the first time. And I learned what peace was. It was wild. I have a client who was dealing with a situation where she had a birth trauma story, and she'd also had 3 live births, and then she had 2 abortions. And so we were healing all of those birth stories for her because she was in high anxiety all the time. And so I required her to go to a float tank. Raise your hand if you've ever been floating.
Oh, that's great.
Right? It's good stuff. But I heard somebody who was doing meditation, they're like, oh, my back started hurting. Oh, my legs started hurting. And there are people, you know, when we get quiet, we start to pay attention to these things. So she got in the float tank, and she just let everything go. All this anxiety that she was feeling in her body. And she was always out here in anxiety, right? And she got in the float tank, and she put her hands on her belly, kind of intuitively. And if you've ever floated, like you're floating. It's like salt water, and you just float. And so your arms are usually out. Sometimes it feels good to have them here. She put him on her belly. And what she saw was this bright purple light. It's a pitch black room. Like you can't see anything in front of you. And she saw bright purple light, and she texted me. She's like, what was that? Just scared. And I was like, babe, that was peace. That's all it was. And she was so scared of peace, and a lot of us are, because we've been programmed for pain. We've been programmed for poverty. So we have to flip that switch. And how we flip that switch is we have to really examine these questions and really start to ask ourselves these high-level, bigger questions. What would you really love to create as your new normal? So I'm going to give you some time to really process through this. Natalie mentioned Houston chapter leader. She's like, I really need to answer these questions. Natalie's been working with me for 6 months or so. I have a group program that Natalie was participating in, and she's like, I really need to answer these questions. I go, well, you're going to get the opportunity, so now's your opportunity. So if we have some music, Cheryl, you want to play that for a little bit? I want you to just process through this and let anything come up. And whatever comes up for you, write it down. Don't judge it. Just write it down. What would you really
Out of
love?
the tree of life, I just.
What would you really love to create as your new normal? Make it jazzy.
The best is yet to come.
The best is yet to come.
The best is yet to come, and babe, won't it be fun?
What if?
You think you've seen the sun, but you ain't seen it shine. Wait till the warm-up's underway.
If you want to experience something different, you have to let something of a lower nature die.
That sunshine day. You ain't
It's the law.
nothing yet.
Most of us don't want to grow because we intuitively know this to be true. We have to let go of something of a lower nature in order to step in to the desire. And that's the line in the sand. Remember, we need love, security, and self-esteem. Those were our 3 basic needs. Okay, kill the music for a second. Here we go. Love, security, and self-esteem. And so the reason why we don't want to let go of those things of a lower nature is because these 3 things are compromised, or we think they're compromised when we have to let go of something. So what I like to do, just to make it really simple, is to start looking at those things that you don't want in your life, those things that you're tolerating from yourself, in your environment, in your personal environment here, this body. The things that you can control. So the pain brain likes to focus on the things that we can't control. The miracle mind likes to focus on the things that we can control. So start making your list of what you're tolerating. In order to get to what we do want, sometimes we have to look at what we don't want. What are you willing to let go of? What are you willing to let down? What are you willing to put down? I was having a conversation, a side conversation with Debbie over here from Orlando, and she was in a car accident recently. And she's wearing a back brace because she was clenching on. She heard the car screeching coming at her in an accident. And she clenched on really tight. And so now her body feels pain. When we're holding on, holding tight to something, that's when we experience pain. We have to be willing to let go and open our arms and let it in. You have to recognize that nothing that you're feeling is ever wrong. Nothing that you're experiencing is wrong. There is no right or wrong. It just is. It is what it is. There's no good or bad, right or wrong. It just is what it is. Now that you have a list of the things that you don't want, now this is not one and done work. This is ongoing. These are the big ideas of life. These are the big ideas that you will constantly answer over and over again. I'm almost 9 years out and I'm still answering these questions. I have a vision. Now I'm a visionary, like Carolyn. So I typically see things about 5 years ahead of when they actually should happen. And I'm also a quick start. And what that means is that I jump in. I start running the race, and I forget that there's like people running the race with me, and they actually have a baton, and I forget to grab the baton, which is actually the plan, ladies. And I just go start running toward it. But what I've realized now is that the vision is the goal. The goal doesn't change. Plans change. The vision stays the same. So I had to go back, way back, when I was a child. What did I want? What excited me? Why was I here? In order to then step into my purpose and make meaning of this. So what I like to do is have people become a visioneer. It's an engineer of your vision. Like Robert said, all we're doing here is making a movie. You're writing it, you're scripting it, you're producing it, you're acting in it. You get to choose. It's playing right in front of you sometimes. Sometimes it's smacking you in the back of the head, and you're just not seeing it. But the movie is always in front of you, and all you have to do is step in. And so how we do that is we use all 5 of our senses. And beyond even that, to build into your mind your dream life. This is a visioneer. You've got to see it, feel it, taste it, smell it. You have to become it. Now, sometimes when we're in this position that you probably are, sitting out there, we have to make deals with ourselves. First, we have to have the desire. We have to have the desire to live more and to love greater. We have to have the desire to continue to breathe. You know, many widows who walk into Modern Widows Club socials are not breathing. And I tell them that's their first job. You have to learn how to breathe. Just breathe. You'll never get this one moment again with that one single breath. And then we want to expand. So first we have that desire. It's just an idea. Entertain the idea. And then we expand that by letting it grow. And we want to let it grow into a fantasy. And the reason why we call it a fantasy is because we can't really grasp the concept that it's even possible at this point. My dreams are big. My dreams are multi-million-dollar dreams. My dreams are not going to happen in a day, in a moment, no matter what my invisible posse or how strong they are is doing. And then we have to absorb that into our being. We absorb the vision until it becomes a part of your cells. And finally, we lock it in. We lock it in by acting your way into the reality. You have to act your way there. You can't think your way there. You can't wish your way there. You can't dream your way there. You have to act your way there. So what would you really love your new normal? Your new normal life to look like, feel like, smell like, taste like, sound like? So when I have my retreats and work with my clients, I have them make decision cards. Decision cards are the commitment. It's the vision. The vision doesn't change. Plans change. I write my plans in pencil.
My calendar.
My business plans, everything's written in pencil. Plans change. We know that. But the reason why we're here is to increase life. That's what life means. We're here to experience life. And so with that being said, that's the vision. What's going to bring more life to you? Remember, the art is yours. Your desires are not my desires. My desires are not your desires. My desires are not to be judged by you or anyone. Your desires are not to be judged by you, by other people. You share those desires with people whom you can trust, to not judge them, to not stifle them, to not push them down. The vision doesn't change. That's the commitment. So we make these little decision cards. Some like to call them goal cards. Whatever vocabulary you want to use. But what we want to do is make a box in your notes, or you can use the black card that's on your table if you haven't used that. And what I have them do is carry this around with them. I also have them make one and put it next to their beds. And most of my clients are entrepreneurs, so they put them next to their computers. And this becomes our action. We begin with, I am so happy and completely grateful now that I. So when you start to make a deal with yourself, and you're like, I tell my clients all the time, if you have to do this, I don't know if you can really see my face, but if you had to squinch up your eyes and like go, I don't know about that. That's a no, you don't believe it yet. But if it's coming through you, it's part of the desire. So that little tidbit that you're not fully 100% believing, that's probably what should go on the decision card. I am so happy and grateful now that I. And gratitude is a feeling. It's a feeling that you feel deep within your soul. I can drop right into gratitude right now and cry with great emotion. Because I am 100% grateful that I am here and I get to do my good work. Now, I don't know what it is for you. I don't know what your decision is. But wherever it is, we're going to start committing to it with movement. Because every action begins with movement. Now, you guys are already starting to rewire your brains because you're here. You're doing crazy things, like coming into a room of 100 widows. It was my 20th year class reunion, 2 months after Thor was killed. And I put my heels and my lipstick on, and I required myself to walk in that room with my head held high and my invisible crown on. Because I knew 100% that doing those things that made me feel uncomfortable, that made me recognize the power that I still hold within, and the interdependency that I have upon myself, were going to lead me to more life. So I'm not going to make you go to your 20-year reunion, but I am going to make you get up. And I want you to share. I want you to walk around the room and share with 2 people that you've not met. We have 2 minutes, so make it quick and make it good. You're sharing your decision card. Oh, I didn't do it. Do we not have decisions yet? Gotcha. All right, so here's what we're going to do. You're going to actually make some sort of commitment to yourself. A commitment to yourself that goes on the card. I am so happy and completely grateful now that I. And if you don't have an answer for that yet, just put a question mark. We call that parking lot in corporate. Let's parking lot it. It's still going to be there. Some of you are still asking, what do I want? I don't know. Just keep asking. It'll surface. Okay, so let's share at our table. How about that? Those of you who know what you want, who are going to be so happy and grateful, let's share. Okay, here's the thing. Don't ask widows to start talking and then tell them to stop, because they're not going to. A second ago, you didn't have anything to say. This is how it goes, though, right? I have nothing to say. I don't know what I want. Wait a minute. And then we go on. Okay. Everything that I've shared with you, I'm going to go deeper on Sunday. We're going to go deeper on Sunday into what actually it takes, the science part, the process of actually letting life in. And if you want these PowerPoints that I've used this morning, pull out your iPhones or whatever you use and send me a text. 816-215-8064. It's up here. Right up here. Send me a text with your name, and I'll reply to you within a reasonable time. I'll reply to you and find out specifically what you would like, if you would like the emotional energy chart or the PowerPoint slides, or just to have the conversation. Thank you.